Welcome back. Today's story is about a man who made a mistake years ago, but the guilt is eating him alive. He had what seemed like the perfect marriage, yet one moment of weakness changed everything. Now he's struggling with a question. Should he tell his wife or take this secret to the grave? Stay till the end and tell me in the comments. Would you confess? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and let's get into it. Part 1. The mistake that changed everything. I never thought I would be that guy, the man who betrays the one person he promised to love forever. But 4 years ago, I became exactly that. My name is Ethan Parker, 42M, and I've been married to my wife Jessica, 43F, for almost 20 years. We built a life together, raised 2 teenagers, and through all the ups and downs, I always believed we had a rock-solid relationship. Until one mistake made me question everything. It started as an emotional affair with a colleague, Emily, at my advertising firm in Chicago. It wasn't planned. It wasn't something I ever thought I would do. But one night, after an office party, we had too much to drink. And before I knew it, we were alone in her car, her lips on mine. There was no sex, just kissing. But in that moment, it didn't matter. I had crossed the line. And then, just like that, COVID hit. Emily left the company, and the affair fizzled out. I never contacted her again. No closure, no goodbye, just gone. Looking back, I'm relieved it ended before it got worse. But the guilt never left. Every time I look at Jessica, every time she smiles at me, I feel like a fraud. Part 2. The marriage that looks perfect from the outside. Jessica and I have a great relationship, at least on the surface. We enjoy each other's company. We laugh together, we make a good team. But beneath that, there's one issue that has always been there. She never initiates intimacy. For years, I tried to talk about it. I told her how much it meant to me. She always promised she'd try, but nothing changed. And eventually, I stopped bringing it up. Maybe that's what made me weak when Emily showed interest. For the first time in years, I felt wanted. I felt desired. And that feeling, it was addicting. But none of that excuses what I did. Now, for years later, I still haven't told Jessica. I thought I could bury the secret and move on. But I can't. Because every time I hear her say, "I trust you," it feels like a dagger to my chest. Part 3. Should I tell her? I've been reading articles, watching videos, even scrolling through Reddit trying to find the answer. Some say honesty is the only way forward. That if I truly love Jessica, I owe her the truth. That our marriage isn't real if it's built on a lie. Others say confessing would only be for me. That it wouldn't fix anything. It would just destroy the life we built, crush her spirit, and leave our kids caught in the middle. And that's the part that terrifies me the most. Our kids. They're 16 and 18. They look up to me. They think I'm a good man. If this blows up, if Jessica leaves, if our family falls apart, I'll be the one who ruined everything. I keep telling myself that I'll never make this mistake again. That I can be the husband she deserves without tearing our marriage apart. But is that the right thing to do? Or am I just a coward? Part 4. The decision I can't make. Last night, Jessica and I sat on the couch watching an old movie. She reached over, grabbed my hand, and squeezed it gently. She doesn't know it, but that moment almost broke me. I wanted to tell her. I wanted to come clean, apologize, and beg for her forgiveness. But I didn't. Because if I do, I don't know if she'll still be here tomorrow. And right now, I don't know if I'm strong enough to take that risk. Part 5. The guilt is eating me alive. I thought I could move on. I told myself, it was just one night. It didn't mean anything. But every time Jessica says she loves me, every time she trusts me, it feels like she's hugging a ghost. Someone she doesn't really know. And now, the guilt is getting worse. I can't even look her in the eye without wondering if she can sense it. If she already knows. If she's just waiting for me to come clean. Part 6. The signs she might already know. They say women have a sixth sense for betrayal. And lately, Jessica has been acting different. She's been distant. Not cold, but like there's something on her mind she won't say out loud. She asks random questions about my past work relationships. At first, it was casual. "Hey, do you ever hear from Emily?" But then she asked if I ever had feelings for anyone at work. She's been staring at me differently, like she's watching, observing, trying to figure something out. And maybe it's all in my head. Maybe it's just the guilt twisting everything. Or maybe she knows. Part 7. The message that changed everything. Last night, while Jessica was asleep, I got a message. First, I thought it was spam. But when I opened it, my blood ran cold. It was from Emily. "Ethan, I need to talk to you. It's important." I stared at the screen, my hands shaking. Why now? She hasn't contacted me in 4 years. Why reach out now? What could possibly be so important? And more importantly, does Jessica know about this? Part 8. The risk of everything falling apart. I didn't sleep that night. I kept thinking, what if this is it? What if Emily is about to ruin everything? What if Jessica sees the message? What if she's already seen it? And worse, what if Emily is about to tell her before I do? Part 9. The decision I have to make. I have 2 choices now. I ignore the message, delete it, and pretend none of this ever happened. I go on with my life, bury the past, and try to be the best husband I can be. Or I answer Emily, find out what she wants, and risk it all. And maybe, just maybe, I tell Jessica the truth. But can our marriage survive this? Or is this secret the beginning of the end? Part 10. The message he couldn't ignore. I stared at the screen for what felt like hours. "Ethan, I need to talk to you. It's important." My heart pounded. My first instinct was to delete it, pretend I never saw it. But my hands wouldn't move. What if this wasn't about us? What if she was in trouble? What if she was about to tell Jessica everything? I needed to know. With a deep breath, I typed, "Emily, what's going on?" Seconds felt like hours. Then, 3 dots appeared. She was typing. Part 11. The secret she was keeping. Emily's reply came fast. "I know this is out of nowhere, but I need to meet. It's important. Please." I gripped my phone so tight my knuckles turned white. Meet? No way. That was the one thing I couldn't risk. "Emily, I can't meet up. Just tell me what's going on." Silence. No reply. Minutes passed, then an hour. Had she changed her mind? Had I made a mistake even replying? And then, at 2 a.m., another message appeared. "I didn't tell you everything back then, and I should have. But it's not just about us anymore." I read the words over and over. What was she talking about? What hadn't she told me? And why did it feel like my past was about to rip my life apart? Part 12. Jessica's suspicion grows. The next morning, Jessica sat across from me at the kitchen table, sipping her coffee. Her eyes flicked toward my phone, sitting face down on the table. "You were up late last night," she said casually. I forced a smile. "Couldn't sleep." She nodded but said nothing else. But I could feel it. The tension. The suspicion. Was it my guilt making me paranoid? Or was she starting to piece things together? I needed to be careful. Part 13. The call that changed everything. Later that day, I was alone in my office when my phone rang. Unknown number. I hesitated before answering. "Hello." A pause. Then Emily's voice. "Ethan, I didn't want to say this in a message, but I need you to listen. This isn't just about what happened between us." I closed my eyes, my pulse racing. "Then what is this about?" Silence. Then, "It's about Jessica." Part 14. The past colliding with the present. "Jessica?" I sat up straight. "What do you mean? What does Jessica have to do with this?" Emily hesitated. "I don't want to do this over the phone, but you need to know the truth. About her. About everything." I felt the blood drain from my face. What the hell was she talking about? "Emily," I said, my voice sharp, "if you have something to say it now." She exhaled. "She already knew, Ethan. About us. She's known for a long time." Part 15. The lie I didn't see coming. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. "What the hell are you talking about?" My voice was sharp, but inside, I felt like I was unraveling. Emily sighed. "Ethan, she knew. Maybe not everything, but enough. She knew something happened between us." "That's impossible," I said. gripping the edge of my desk. If she knew, she would have confronted me. She would have said something. Would she? Emily's voice was calm, steady. Or would she just wait? Watch. See if you ever told her yourself. I swallowed hard. 'Cause deep down I knew she was right. Part 16. Jessica's silent game. That night, I couldn't look at Jessica the same way. We sat on the couch, watching TV like we always did. But suddenly, every glance, every moment of silence between us felt loaded. Had she really known all this time? Was she just waiting? And if she knew, why hadn't she said anything? The only thing worse than her knowing was the possibility that she was keeping her own secret. Part 17. The hidden clue. I needed answers. The next day, while Jessica was out, I did something I hadn't done in years. I went through her phone. I knew it was wrong, but I had no choice. If she really knew, there had to be something. A message, a note, a clue. And then I found it. A message thread with someone named D. The latest message was from 2 weeks ago. Jessica, I can't keep pretending forever. I just need more time. I froze. Pretending? More time for what? Part 18. Who is D? I sat there, staring at the screen, my hands shaking. Who the hell was D? Was it a friend? A therapist? Or was it something worse? Because in that moment, I realized something terrifying. I had spent so much time hiding my own mistake, my own secret, that I had never considered the possibility that Jessica had one of her own. And now, for the first time, I had to ask myself, had I ever really known my wife at all? Part 19. The risk I had to take. I needed to know the truth. But I couldn't just ask her, not yet. So I did the only thing I could. I called the number. It rang once, twice, 3 times. Then, finally, a man's voice answered. Jessica. I didn't speak. Couldn't. Because just like that, I had my answer. And it was worse than I ever imagined. Part 20. The voice on the other end. My heart stopped. The man's voice was calm. Familiar, even. I knew I should hang up. But instead, I stayed silent. Jessica, he said again. Then a pause. A slow, careful breath. And then, in a lower voice, who is this? I ended the call, and sat there in the dark, my hands shaking. Part 21. The evidence I didn't want to find. For years, I had told myself Jessica would never betray me, even after what I did, even if she knew. But now, I wasn't sure anymore. I had to know. So I did something I never thought I would do. I went through her messages, not just the recent ones, all of them, and what I found shattered everything. Part 22. The man she was hiding. The messages went back over a year. Most were casual, short texts late at night, nothing outright incriminating. But one thread caught my eye. A conversation from 6 months ago. Jessica, you know this isn't right. D. Then why do we keep doing it? Jessica. Because I can't stop thinking about you. My chest tightened. My vision blurred. I scrolled further. And then I found it. D. I'll book the hotel again next weekend. Same place. Jessica. Yes, but I need to be careful. Ethan is starting to notice things. I dropped the phone. The room spun around me. This wasn't just emotional. Jessica was having an affair. Part 23. The truth I never wanted to face. I sat there, staring at the messages, feeling like I couldn't breathe. I had been so consumed by my own guilt, my own mistakes, that I never saw hers. And the worst part? She had been doing it longer than me. This wasn't one mistake. This was calculated, repeated, hidden. And while I was agonizing over whether to confess, she was booking hotel rooms, lying to my face. I wanted to scream. I wanted to confront her, demand an explanation, ask her why. But deep down, I already knew. Part 24. The confrontation that will end everything. Jessica walked in an hour later, smiling like nothing was wrong, like she wasn't hiding a second life. Hey, she said, setting her bag down. How was your day? I clenched my fists. She had no idea. I had proof. And now, it was my turn to decide what to do next. Part 25. The lies keep coming. Jessica set her bag down, stretching like it was just another normal night. "Hey," she said, giving me a quick glance. "How was your day?" I gripped my phone, my knuckles white. I could feel the messages burning through my pocket. The proof, the hotel bookings, the late-night texts, the betrayal. She looked so calm, like she had nothing to hide. I forced myself to stay still, to breathe. "Fine," I said, my voice even. "You?" Jessica shrugged. "Busy. You know how work is." The words made me sick, because I knew exactly where she had been. Not work, not anywhere near her office, and certainly not where she said she would be. I knew because I had checked. Part 26. The proof that destroyed me. Earlier that day, before she got home, I made a decision. I followed her. I left work early, parked a few blocks from where she said she'd be, and then I watched as she walked straight into a hotel lobby, watched as she met a man in a suit, watched as he placed his hand on the small of her back and led her inside. No hesitation, no guilt, like it was routine, because for her it was. Part 27. The silent game begins. Now, as she stood in front of me, completely unaware that I knew the truth, I felt something shift inside me. I could confront her, call her out, watch her scramble for excuses, or I could play the long game, because now I had the power. She thought she was in control. She thought she was the one hiding things. But now, I was the one watching, waiting, and the longer I waited, the harder she would fall. Part 28. The message that changed everything. That night, I lay in bed, pretending to sleep. Jessica's phone was on her nightstand, and at exactly 12:17 a.m., it vibrated. I didn't move, didn't breathe, and then another vibration. Jessica stirred. I heard her exhale softly, then reach for her phone. Silence. Then she got up. I opened my eyes just a sliver, watching as she left the room. Her phone clutched in her hand. I waited. 30 seconds. Then, I slipped out of bed and followed. She was standing in the kitchen, back turned, phone pressed to her ear. I couldn't hear the words, but I could hear him. A man's voice. Low, familiar. And then Jessica laughed. Soft, quiet, like she was talking to me the way she used to. And that was the moment I knew. I wasn't going to forgive her. I was going to destroy her. Part 29. The trap is set. The next morning, Jessica kissed me on the cheek like nothing was wrong. I let her. She smiled. "I'll be late tonight. Big project at work." I smiled back. "Take your time." She thought she was getting away with it. She thought I was clueless. But while she was planning her next lie, I was planning something else. Because now it was my turn to play the game. And when it was over, she wouldn't even see it coming. Part 30. The perfect alibi. Jessica was too comfortable. She thought she was in control, thought she was outsmarting me. And that's exactly what I needed her to believe. So I played my part. Smiled at breakfast. Asked about her day. Laughed at her stories. But at night, I was building my case. I pulled our bank statements. Checked her GPS history. Looked through her social media activity. And with every piece of evidence I gathered, her lie became bigger. Because now, I didn't just know she was cheating. I knew when, where, and soon, I'd know who. Part 31. The hotel stakeout. I knew her routine by now. Every Thursday night, Jessica had her so-called late meetings. And every Thursday, her car ended up in the same parking lot. So this time, I got there first. I parked 2 spots away from her usual spot, far enough to not be seen but close enough to watch. And at 7:42 p.m., right on schedule, Jessica pulled in. She sat there for a moment, checking her phone. And then he arrived. A black Audi pulled up beside her. A man stepped out, tall, well-dressed. I clenched my fists, because I knew that face. Daniel Carter, my so-called friend. Part 32. The betrayal is deeper than I thought. Daniel and I had known each other for years. Barbecues, football games, family vacations. Our kids had grown up together. And all this time, he had been sleeping with my wife. Jessica stepped out of her car, glancing around as if she was afraid of being seen. And then she kissed him, right there in the open, like it was nothing, like the last 20 years meant nothing. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay calm, because this wasn't the moment to act. Not yet. I needed more, and soon I'd have it. Part 33. The setup begins. The next morning, I made my first move. "Hey," I said casually as Jessica poured her coffee. "Daniel's wife texted me. Wants to do a couple's dinner soon." Jessica froze for half a second. Then, just as quickly, she smiled. "Oh, that sounds nice." She was good at lying. But now, I was better, because while she was busy sneaking around behind my back, I was about to drop a bomb on hers. Part 34. The ultimate betrayal is coming. For the next week, I let Jessica dig her own grave. I watched as she texted him right in front of me. I listened as she made fake excuses for where she was going. And then I made my final move. I called Daniel's wife, and I told her everything. Part 35. The wife who knew nothing. When I called Daniel's wife, I wasn't sure what to expect. But the moment she answered, I knew she had no idea. "Hey Ethan," she said cheerfully. "Jessica told me you wanted to plan a dinner soon?" Jessica had already laid the groundwork. She thought she was always one step ahead. But this time, she was already cornered. Part 36. Dropping the bomb. I took a deep breath. "I need to tell you something. About Daniel. About Jessica." There was a long pause. "Ethan." Her voice was softer now, cautious. "What do you mean?" So I told her. Everything. The messages. The late-night phone calls. The hotel meetups. First, she didn't say anything. And then, she started crying. I expected rage. Maybe even denial. But all I heard was heartbreak. "I knew something was wrong," she whispered. I didn't want to believe it." Now, she had no choice. Part 37. The trap is set. We talked for an hour. Planned everything. And in 2 days, when Jessica thought she was meeting Daniel at the hotel, she was going to get the shock of her life. I wasn't going to just confront her. I was going to make sure she could never lie again. Part 38. The night before it all ends. That night, Jessica curled up next to me on the couch like nothing was wrong. She rested her head on my shoulder, her breathing slow, relaxed. She had no idea that in less than 24 hours, her world was about to collapse. She looked up at me and smiled. "I love you," she whispered. And for the first time in years, I felt nothing. Part 39. The hotel showdown. The next evening, I got there first. Daniel's wife was waiting in the lobby. She looked composed, but her hands were shaking. "Are you ready?" I asked. She nodded. And then we waited. At exactly 7:48 p.m., Jessica walked in. She didn't even look around. She was too confident, too comfortable. She headed straight for the elevators, straight to the room. So we followed. And the second she opened the door to find Daniel already inside, with his wife standing right behind her, the game was over. Part 40. The truth finally comes out. Jessica's face drained of color. Daniel froze, his mouth opening, but no words came out. And then, Jessica turned to look at me, like she was just now realizing what was happening, like she had just lost everything. And all I said was, "How long did you really think you could keep this up?" Part 41. The moment of realization. The second Jessica stepped into that hotel room, she knew. The air shifted, the kind of silence that could crush a person. Her body went rigid, her fingers tightening around the purse strap as her eyes darted between us. She had walked in expecting Daniel. What she got was all of us. Daniel's wife stood just behind me, arms crossed, her face stoic. A woman scorned but unshaken. Daniel? The man could barely breathe. He had nowhere to run. And then, Jessica's gaze finally locked onto mine. That's when she knew this wasn't just a coincidence. This was a trap. And she had walked right into it. Part 42. The collapse begins. "Ethan," she whispered, barely audible. What's going on?" I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because she still thought she could play innocent. She still thought she could talk her way out of this. Daniel was already backing up toward the wall, his hands raised slightly like we were about to attack him. Just, let's all take a breath, he stammered. This isn't. Daniel's wife cut him off. Don't you dare try to explain yourself. Her voice was sharp as a blade. Jessica turned toward her, still looking for a way out. But Sarah wasn't playing that game. She pulled out her phone. And then she pressed play. The sound of Jessica's own voice filled the room. I can't stop thinking about you. I just wish we had more time. Ethan is starting to notice things. Jessica went pale. And Daniel? He closed his eyes. Because now, there was no escaping this. Part 43. The confrontation. Jessica turned back to me, her expression shifting from shock to desperation. Ethan, please, I can explain. I held up a hand. No. That single word stopped her cold. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't the fool in this relationship. Jessica had controlled the narrative for so long. But not anymore. You don't get to explain, I said, my voice steady. You don't get to twist this into something it's not. I know everything. Jessica swallowed hard, her breath quickening. You went through my phone? She accused. Like that was the real problem. I smiled coldly. I followed you. Jessica's lips parted slightly, her entire body shaking. I watched you walk into this hotel. I watched you meet him. I watched you do this over and over again while I sat at home like an idiot. Her mouth opened, then closed. There were no more lies left to tell. Part 44. Daniel's wife takes control. Sarah stepped forward now, her arms still crossed, eyes burning with fury. Daniel refused to meet her gaze. I gave you everything, she said, her voice calm but deadly. Daniel flinched. Sarah, it was a mistake. No, she cut him off again. A mistake is one night. A mistake is something you regret. But you had a second life. You weren't just cheating on me. You were building something behind my back. Daniel had nothing left. He was a broken man standing in the ruins of his own making. And then Sarah turned to Jessica. And you smiled in my face, sat at my dinner table, played with my children. And the whole time, you were sneaking around with my husband. Jessica looked down. For the first time, she had no defense. Because there wasn't one. Part 45, my final words to her. Jessica turned back to me, her eyes pleading. Ethan, please. You have to understand. It wasn't. I held up my hand again. I don't need to hear it. She froze. I spent so much time feeling guilty over my own mistakes. I said, my voice stronger now. I spent years thinking I was the one who needed to fix things. I took a step forward, lowering my voice. But I see now. Our marriage has been dead for a long time. Jessica shook her head. No, it hasn't. We can. No, I cut her off. We can't. And with that, I turned to leave. Part 46. The final goodbye. As I reached the door, I heard her take a step forward. Ethan, wait. I stopped but didn't turn around. You can't just leave, she whispered. We can fix this. I exhaled slowly. Then, without looking back, I said the last words I would ever say to her. We? There is no we anymore. And then I walked out. Part 47. The aftermath begins. Jessica's world? It had collapsed. Daniel's marriage? Over. And me? For the first time in years I felt free. But now? There was only one question left. Where do I go from here? Part 48. The house that was never a home. The day after I left, I went back to the house. Not to stay. To take what was mine. Jessica wasn't home. Which was exactly what I wanted. I walked through the front door, looking around, and for the first time I saw the place for what it really was. A lie. A house where secrets were kept. A house where love had been replaced by deception. It wasn't my home anymore, and it never really was. Part 49. Packing up the past. I packed fast. I didn't take much, just what mattered. The photos of my kids. My personal documents. Some things from my office. I left the furniture, the dishes, the wedding album, because that wasn't my life anymore. That was hers, and she could keep it, or burn it to the ground. Either way, I didn't care. Part 50. The Unexpected Visitor. Just as I was finishing up, I heard a car pull up. Jessica. I exhaled, bracing myself. The front door opened, and then, she was there. She looked awful. Messy hair, dark circles under her eyes. She wasn't the same woman who had been so smug, so sure of herself, sneaking around behind my back. She looked defeated. "Ethan," she whispered. I didn't answer. I just kept packing. She swallowed. I didn't think you'd be here." I zipped my duffel bag shut. "I won't be for long." She flinched at my cold tone. And then, she started crying. Part 51. The Apology That Came Too Late. "I don't know what to do," she whispered, sinking onto the couch. I stared at her. She really expected sympathy. After everything, I stayed silent. She looked up at me, her hands trembling. "I'm sorry." I let out a slow breath. Finally, she said it, but it didn't mean a damn thing. "Jessica," I said quietly, "you're not sorry." She blinked, confused. "You're just sorry you got caught." Her face crumpled, because she knew I was right. Part 52. The divorce papers arrive. 2 weeks later, I got the call. The divorce papers were finalized. Jessica tried to fight for more, tried to keep the house, tried to keep the money, but I wasn't about to let her win. So I fought back, and I took everything. Not out of revenge, not out of anger, but because she didn't deserve it. She didn't deserve any of it. Part 53. Daniel's Downfall. Daniel wasn't doing any better. Sarah followed through with the divorce, took the house, took the kids, took the savings. And Daniel? He was living in a motel. He had lost his job. He had lost everything. And Jessica? She didn't go running to him, because now that everything was falling apart, she realized he wasn't worth it. Part 54. The day I walked away for good. The last time I saw Jessica was at the lawyer's office. She sat across from me, eyes filled with regret. "You really hate me, don't you?" she whispered. I exhaled, shaking my head. "No," I said simply. "I don't hate you." She blinked in surprise. "But I don't love you either." And that was the real ending. Not some explosion. Not some dramatic final fight. Just the truth. I had moved on. And Jessica? She was left with nothing. Part 55. A New Beginning. I packed my bags. I took a new job in a new city. I left the past where it belonged. Because at the end of the day, revenge wasn't about destroying them. It was about rebuilding myself. And as I drove away, leaving everything behind, I realized something. Jessica thought she had won. Daniel thought he had everything under control. But in the end, they lost everything. And me? I was just getting started. Part 56. The Message That Changed Everything. It had been 6 months since I last saw Jessica. 6 months of silence. No calls. No texts. Until today. I was sitting in my new apartment, staring at my phone, when it vibrated. One new message. From Jessica. I almost ignored it. But then I saw the words. "We need to talk. It's important." I stared at the screen. Then, against my better judgment, I replied. Part 57. The Unexpected Meeting. Jessica chose a coffee shop, neutral ground. When I walked in, she was already there. She looked different. Not just tired, but broken. For a brief second, I felt something almost like sympathy. Then I remembered what she had done. I sat down across from her, arms crossed. "This better be good." She hesitated. Then, she whispered the words that knocked the air out of my lungs. "Ethan, I think I'm being followed." Part 58. The Truth Unfolds. I frowned. "What?" Jessica swallowed hard. "I don't know who it is. I keep seeing the same car parked outside my place. I hear noises at night. Someone left a note on my windshield. Just my name. Nothing else." I leaned back. "And what does this have to do with me?" She looked down at her hands. I don't know who else to turn to. I let out a slow breath. This wasn't my problem. Not anymore. But something about the fear in her voice. It didn't sound fake. And then, she said something that changed everything. I think it's Daniel. Part 59, The Man Who Lost Everything. Jessica's theory made sense. Daniel had lost his marriage, his job, his money. Now, he had nothing. And maybe, just maybe, he blamed her. I rubbed my temples. Jessica, if you think he's dangerous, call the cops. She shook her head. I can't prove anything. And I don't think he wants to hurt me. I narrowed my eyes. Then what does he want? She exhaled shakily. I think he wants revenge. Part 60. The night everything changed. I told myself I wouldn't get involved. I told myself Jessica wasn't my responsibility. But that night, as I sat alone in my apartment, I couldn't shake the feeling. Something wasn't right. Then my phone buzzed again. Jessica. He's outside. And just like that, I knew I had to act. Part 61. Face to face with a monster. I arrived at Jessica's apartment in record time. Her lights were off. The street was empty. But then, I saw the car, parked across the street, engine running. I took a deep breath and walked over. The driver's side window rolled down. And there he was. Daniel. Part 62. The final confrontation. Daniel looked terrible. Dark circles under his eyes. Clothes wrinkled. Like a man who had lost everything. For a moment we just stared at each other. Then he smiled. But there was no humor in it. Hey, Ethan. I clenched my fists. What the hell are you doing here? He sighed, rubbing his jaw. I just wanted to see her. I didn't move. You lost that right a long time ago. Daniel exhaled slowly. You know, I never thought it would end like this. I shook my head. You did this to yourself. He chuckled, cold and empty. Did I? Then, before I could react, he reached into his jacket. My breath caught. Was this it? Was he about to do something insane? I took a step back. But then he pulled out a folded piece of paper. He held it out to me. Give this to her, he said quietly. I didn't take it. What is it? His eyes darkened. A goodbye. And then, just like that, he drove away. Part 63. The letter that ended it all. I stood in Jessica's doorway holding the letter. She hesitated before taking it. Her hands trembled as she opened it. I didn't read it, but I saw her face as she did. The tears that slipped down her cheeks. And when she looked up at me, her voice was barely a whisper. He's leaving town. I exhaled. It was over. For real this time. Part 64. Moving on. For good. A week later I got another job offer. A new city. A fresh start. Jessica called me one last time. I just wanted to say, thank you. I didn't say anything. Then I hung up. And as I packed my bags, stepping into the unknown, I realized something. This time, I wasn't just walking away from Jessica. I was walking towards something better. And whatever came next, I was ready for it. The end. Or a new beginning? Part 65. The call that changed everything. It had been 3 weeks since Daniel left town. 3 weeks of silence. I was moving forward. New city, new job. Finally free. Until the phone rang. An unknown number. I almost ignored it. But something told me to pick up. Ethan Parker? A voice asked. I frowned. Yes. The voice hesitated. Then, I think we need to talk. It's about Jessica. Part 66. A stranger's warning. I sat up straight. The voice was deep, calm but serious. Who is this? I asked. The man exhaled. My name's David. He hesitated, then sighed. I know Jessica. I used to be involved with her. My stomach tightened. Another man? I shouldn't have been surprised. But what he said next, it was worse than I could have imagined. She's in trouble. Part 67. The secret she never told me. I gripped the phone. What kind of trouble? David sighed. You don't know, do you? He muttered. Jessica owes people money. A lot of it. I blinked. What? He continued. She's been borrowing money for years. From people you don't mess with. I felt a cold chill run down my spine. This wasn't just about cheating. This wasn't just about betrayal. Jessica was caught up in something dangerous. And somehow I was being dragged back into it. Part 68. The debt that could kill her. David explained everything. Jessica had been taking out loans from dangerous people. Not banks. Not credit cards. The kind of people who don't ask twice. And now, they wanted their money. I ran a hand through my hair. So why are you telling me this? David sighed. I know you don't owe her anything, he said. But I also know you're the only one she has left. I let out a bitter laugh. Not my problem. David hesitated. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. They know about you, Ethan. Part 69. A target on my back. I stood up, heart pounding. What do you mean they know about me? David's voice was firm. They think you were part of it. That you helped her. That you might know where the money is. I clenched my jaw. This is ridiculous. David exhaled. It doesn't matter if it is or isn't. These guys? They don't care about the truth. They care about getting paid. I swallowed hard. Jessica had dragged me into her mess. And now, I was in danger. Part 70. Jessica's desperate plea. I hung up. I didn't want to deal with this. I didn't want to deal with her. But then, my phone rang again. This time I knew the number. Jessica. I let it ring. 5 times. Then I answered. Ethan. She breathed. I need your help. I closed my eyes. Of course she did. What have you done, Jessica? She sobbed on the other end. They're coming for me, Ethan. I don't know what to do. I should have hung up. I should have walked away. But instead, I asked the one question I already knew the answer to. How much do you owe? Jessica whispered. $150,000. My heart stopped. And just like that, I was back in the game. Part 71. The price of betrayal. Jessica's voice was shaking. Ethan, please. I don't have anywhere else to go. I exhaled slowly, gripping the phone tighter. This is your problem, Jessica. I know, she whispered. But now it's yours too. And that's when I heard it. A sound in the background. A deep voice. And then, the line went dead. Part 72. The warning. I stared at my phone. Jessica was gone. Taken? Or had she just hung up? Then another call. Unknown number. I answered. Silence. Then, a voice. We have her. The words sent a chill down my spine. If you want her back, the voice continued, you'll come to us. I clenched my jaw. Where? A chuckle. You'll know soon enough. Click. The call ended. And just like that, Jessica's mess had become mine. Part 73. A deal with the devil. An hour later, a message came through. An address. Downtown. An abandoned warehouse. Classic. I knew walking into this was stupid. But I also knew one thing. Jessica wasn't getting out of this alone. So I grabbed my coat. And I walked into the trap. Part 74. The men who owned Jessica. The warehouse was dimly lit. Dust hung in the air. Jessica sat in a chair, wrists bound. 3 men stood around her. Big, dangerous. And then him. The one in charge. Slick suit. Dead eyes. He smiled when he saw me. Ethan Parker, he said smoothly. The man of the hour. I crossed my arms. What do you want? His smile widened. $150,000. Jessica's eyes were pleading. Ethan, I cut her off. I don't have that kind of money. The man shrugged. Then you have a problem. I glanced at Jessica, then back at him. What's the alternative? Part 75. The offer. The man chuckled. I like you, Ethan. He stepped closer. You're smart, calm, a survivor. I didn't respond. He smirked. So here's the deal. He nodded toward Jessica. She's not worth much to me. Dead weight. But you. He tilted his head. You could be useful. I clenched my fists. Meaning? Work for me, he said simply. 1 year. 1 job. Then we're even. Jessica gasped. Ethan, don't. I exhaled. A year working for criminals. Or let Jessica face the consequences. I turned to her. Tell me, Jessica, I said quietly. Why should I save you? Part 76. The truth comes out. Jessica's eyes filled with tears. I was desperate, she whispered. I didn't mean. You didn't mean to what? I snapped. To drag me into this? To lie to me? To make my life a living hell? She sobbed. The man in charge sighed. This is touching, he said, glancing at his watch. But time's up. He turned to me. What's it going to be, Ethan? Her life, or my freedom? Part 77. The last choice. I looked at Jessica, and for the first time, I felt nothing. No anger, no sympathy, just clarity. I turned back to the man, and I made my decision. Part 78. The end of the road. Jessica screamed as they dragged her away. I didn't move, didn't speak. She had made her choices. Now, she was paying for them. The man in charge clapped me on the shoulder. Smart choice. Then he smirked. I'll be in touch, Ethan. I walked out of that warehouse, and I never looked back. Part 79. The final chapter. Days passed, then weeks. Jessica was gone. Daniel was a ghost. And me? I was free. For the first time in years, truly free. But sometimes, freedom comes at a price. And I had just paid mine. The end. Thanks for watching. Did Ethan make the right choice? Let me know in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more stories. See you in the next one.